Hello friends, I'm glad to welcome you on OPERPOST channel. My name is Alexey Andreev and I am a cinematographer and DOP. You can see the links to my works in the description of this video. Today I would like to make a cinematography breakdown of one interesting trailer that came out quite recently. This is a Mortal Kombat movie trailer. Actually, as a child, I was a fan of this franchise, film and the series of games. By the time a third part came out, I think I had already forgotten about the game, but the memories from childhood remained and some kind of nostalgia as well as desire to finally see a decent movie because what came out previously seemed quite creepy to me. A trailer of this new modern version was released just recently. Let's have a look and review it. Of course, I would like to start from the IMDb page of the film, where we can see that the film was shot with Red Weapon Monstro camera. I have only used it several times, shot quite a bit with it, maybe a couple of or 3 works, but I really like this camera, especially the image quality and its very low noise. The lenses that were used in this film are Panavision Ultra Vista. Trailer starts with a night scene in which 2 key colors are used, blue and yellow. We cannot be certain what these colors symbolize here, but it seems that opposition of the yellow Scorpion and the blue Sub-Zero is somehow emphasized here. I'm used to seeing Sub-Zero wearing blue clothes, but here he has absolutely no blue elements in his clothes. Still, the light helps us identify him. There are reflections of a blue light on the armor. On the other hand, it might be just a coincidence. So we see that he has some kind of blue reflections, but at the same time, the armor itself, his clothes do not have some kind of blue color. In this scene, motivations for light are windows. We have yellow windows. And we have some kind of bluish filling in some reflections and shadows. There are also some blue windows. If it was not Mortal Kombat, that might be absolutely unreasonable to have yellow light in some windows and blue light in other windows. Most likely it was filmed in some kind of pavilion. Some windows looked like there was some kind of street light shining from the bottom up, as if the characters were on the 2nd or a 3rd floor and some kind of source of light was located below. We can see some cool reflections on the ceiling from this light. At the same time, some kind of backlight is directed at our characters. The source of light may be hanging on the top, some kind of a stera or light mat. It could be attached to this pipe. It helps emphasize them so that they do not look like they have black skin and helps separate the armor from the black. At the same time, we see that the background is slightly in the smoke. The smoke softens the contrast slightly. In the foreground, black color is much darker than in the background. This is achieved using smoke. The color contrast remains here as well. This pillar is yellow, this pillar is cold, and due to this we obtain a color contrast in the frame. Here we can also see how characters are emphasized. Sub-Zero with a very bright blue light, while Jax has some kind of warm light despite the background behind him is blue. In this scene, in the room, we see some kind of lamps, but they are not used as any kind of color motivation. Perhaps some warm light is directed at Jax from above. We can also see both blue and yellow reflections while the light in the background is white. This scene takes place in some kind of hangar, but there are absolutely no windows. Perhaps some cold light was created just to achieve some kind of color contrast. But all the sources of light that we see in the frame emit a pure white light. Perhaps this lamp is a little bit warmer, still the characters are illuminated with a warm light from above that imitates overhead source of light, which is quite soft. This means there could be some frost frame or softbox or pipe, anything to soften the light. In the eyes of the actress, there are two flares of light. A fixture could have been working, and it also provided a little bit of filling in the shadowed part of her face. The bigger flare is on the right side. We can clearly see the color difference between left and right sides of her face. I think that a frost frame could be used for this. So the overhead light provides these flares. The side light creates transition from darker to a lighter part of the face. Plus, there is a backlight that imitates this lamp located further. I think that a vertically aligned light mat could serve as a source of light for this side light. In addition, there are some locally placed light sources in the background that simply help the scenery look more realistic. In this frame, we see a similar thing. The shadows under the actor's eyes are quite pronounced. Above his head, there must be a soft box providing a key light and some kind of backlight. Although I think a different source of light creates the backlight here. We also see that the right side of the face is slightly brighter than the left. Surely there is another frost frame here to work on shadows under the eyes, and we see its reflection in his eyes. In this scene in the gym, we also see both cold light and warm light. So again, these light accents are here for color contrast, so that somewhere we could make backlight warmer and keep the key light colder. It enables us to dynamically modify the color temperature. Judging by the face, we can say there was some kind of overhead light source that has a cold temperature, and we have this cold flare here. At the same time, on the other part of the face, there is a rather warm flare. Most likely there were two light sources located close to one another. One of them served as a warm side light. A similar one was actually located on the opposite side. At the same time, a soft, colder source of light was clearly there on the left, providing those reflections. And since there are sources of both cold and warm light visible in the frame, there is an opportunity to create such color transitions on the actor's face and the background. As to the background, there is an overhead lamp that serves as a backlight, or there could be something else supporting it and giving some extra light. Later, we see a couple of scenes in the fighting ring where there are huge center windows serving as backlight, most probably hanging with frost frames. And above the frost frame, there are most likely sources of a strong light. Perhaps not too strong, but something like 18 kilowatt fixtures. So the only light we see here is coming through the windows, which is the backlight. Because of this, we can see the flares on the floor since we're looking at this angle. And thanks to these flares, we can clearly see the crowd. As we switch to closer shots, we're still against these windows. When filming in these conditions, we want to make sure our actors are always sideways to the window. We do not place them face to the window. We make sure that the windows are always somewhere on the side, that the actor never turns to the window. Both actors stand face to face, and on the side there are windows. Windows motivate the light here, but sometimes we add some backlight to work with darker parts of the bodies. In addition, it is justified by the fact that there are sources of light in the frame such as overhead lamps. And as we move closer to the actor when it is a close shot, there is always a sufficient contrast on the face since the light is emitted from the side. We can see that the scene is sunlit, the color temperature is quite warm. A scene in a car. There is some kind of light source attached to the front of the car, and this light is directed at his face. A warm light is emitted from above, provides some filling. We can see a shade under the ear, which means the source of light is somewhere above. Here's some kind of ordinary soft side light obtained with a frost frame. In the street scenes, again, we see that the sun is serving as backlight. It is not on the side, not coming from the camera's side. This might be CG, although the director stated that most of the scenes were actually shot in real-life conditions. I think that CG could be somewhere here, while the rest is a real-life landscape, some kind of coal mine. Here is an interesting glass, most probably illuminated from the inside. Here's another interesting scheme when we shoot over the shoulder through actors' backs. So they are looking away from the camera. In terms of light, there is a source of warm light hanging behind the actress. We can see reflections on her forehead, lips, nose. The source of light is behind in order to make the part of her face shadowed. Most probably there is a side light, so a fixture is close to the wall the actors are facing. And judging by the flare, there could be some fixture on the floor as well as some small sources of backlight. And here we see a cold light in the background for color contrast. There is an overhead light directed at the actor's head, creates shadows under his eyes. There could be some source of soft light for key light. And the flare in his eye could be from a desk lamp. Since all the light is emitted from above, if we remove this lamp, eyes would not have flare, which would definitely look not as good. The same location as before, but this time the light is cold. The color temperature was simply changed. The frost frames are still there. We do not see much of the street, no trees, no buildings, just windows hanged with frost frames behind which sources of light are located. We see the characters against the windows. If this one moves a little further, he becomes unnoticeable. That is why there must be marks on the floor for actors to know exactly where to stand. This is an interesting scene. It was clearly filmed for a very long time, maybe during several shooting days, because here you can see a clear transition and change of light. For example, now we see that there is a cloudy day, there's no sun, no bright sun rays. It may be an early morning when the sun has not come out yet, or it is completely cloudy. We can see the smoke is used in the background to soften the contrast in the background and to increase the contrast in the foreground. So our character is very well emphasized precisely due to the fact that there is a smoke behind him. There is a natural overhead light from the sky. Perhaps some parts were covered with black frames, but I really doubt that it was used here. Later on, we see a scene taking place in a different time of day. We can see that bright sunspots appear, but overall it was color corrected to better match with a previously shown cloudy day. So we may notice that even their bright sunspots are still kind of cold. We can notice a pronounced backlight on the actors. And here we can see the sunlight in the background. Above the actors most likely was a 20 feet or 30 feet frost frame so that the sun would not illuminate the action scene too much and make the shooting more complicated. A lot of smoke in the background here again, a more cloudy landscape again. We can see some very pronounced shadows. It is of course impossible to completely avoid the sunlight in the forest. It is obvious that the sun is located behind the house here. The scenery was built that way on purpose to block the direct sunlight from the camera or sunlight from any of these sites. The sun is somewhere behind the house, it serves as backlight and illuminates the smoke. Even here it can be seen a little on the character, but the shadow from the house is quite pronounced so we can work here without much problem. In contrast, in this scene, the background behind the character is very sunny. Still above him, everything is darkened. Perhaps it was also made to emphasize the character himself, the tragic character. The background is very bright. The blue tones prevail, so it is very cold. The color of the sunlight in the background was also adjusted to make it look bluish, to better match with a cloudy day in the previous scenes. In fact, I can imagine how difficult it was for the cinematographer if the scene was filmed for several days, because on the first day you may shoot and it's cloudy, while the next day you shoot in sunny conditions, and you have a bunch of trees. You cannot install that many frames to block the sunlight. It could be filmed during one day, but still the weather conditions change. It may be sunny in the morning, cloudy later, then clouds may disappear. All of that makes filming extremely difficult. So all you can do is to place an actor in a shadow, hang a frame above the actor and try to use the sunlight as backlight to stay on the safe side and avoid situations when the sun illuminates the face and changes everything dramatically. A landscape scene. Judging by the shadows, the sun is on the side. Apparently, this was due to the location. It could depend on where the sun was rising and setting. If it was rising here, the cinematographer would probably choose another spot. In any case, the sunlight from the side is okay. The most important thing is to keep it on the camera's side. In addition, since the sun is on the side, it illuminates this peak very beautifully, which could be another reason for shooting like this. Again, a fight scene on a sunny day. We see that we have some kind of soft light on Sonia. A frame was used to soften the sunlight. This is also how they achieved the contrast on the face, by using another frame on the right. So there were two frames, one on the right to make her face darker and one on the left to soften the sunlight. For wide shots, they were using the sun as a source of backlight, so that it's not shining from the camera's side. Some kind of frame or foam is on the right to block the light. From this upper point, we see that the sun is directly above. It is noticeable that for CG, a red light was added. We can see this ray made with CG. This ray emits the red light, that is why there are reflections of it on the character's face. Here is another interesting shot. By the way, you can see that there is even overexposure. The sun is somewhere here. I think they waited until it was in that spot and shined into this door so that the light would be reflected from the door right onto the actor's face. There could be a sheet of white paper or a frost frame attached to the opposite side of the door. We can see that the doors themselves are kind of red, so to make the reflected light seem more pleasant, such frame or paper could be used. Plus, the reflected light also illuminates this guy. Let's see. No, I think the door itself is illuminated with a soft light. There is a frost frame, while reflections on jacks are coming from the door. I can imagine how many difficulties were with this hat, because those who film scenes like these know how uneasy it is. First of all, the cinematographer had to choose a different angle and shoot from a lower spot. Judging by the flares in his eyes, his nose and head, the light is directed at him from below. We cannot use an overhead light as we will simply not see the actor. On the other hand, there is some kind of overhead light. Perhaps they were imitating the light from this bulb here by using some source of light that also slightly illuminates the armor. We can see some flares here and there. So this decorative light could be supported by some additional cold overhead light. I wonder how the light was arranged for this lightning. But I guess that most likely there was some kind of projector that was turned on when needed. When turned on, it was flooding the actor with light, illuminated these bushes, provided reflections to the trees, and also illuminated the rain. It could be a mix of a strong light and a source of a softer light. We can honestly only guess. Same thing here with Raiden. There is a massive hat that covers a part of his face. Judging by the flare on the nose, the light is coming from below. We can also see that from one side a cold light is directed while the warm light is illuminating him on the other side. It is noticeable thanks to these shadows over here, one from the cold light, one from the warm light. It must have been a night scene, so the warm light is coming from the fire while the cold light is emitted from the outside. On the other hand, this scene is also a night scene, but the color tones are very different. It could be a completely different location, like another planet or world, I don't know. But the night here is different. We see green colors now. There used to be blue colors like that one right behind me, but here it is a lot greener. We also see both warm light on the face and cold light on the face of Jax for color contrast. An interesting light here in this street scene. Blue and yellow reflections at once. It could be made to emphasize the essence of the character, although we can see both cold and warm lights on his sides. Well, there could be another reason for this. Most likely there was some kind of skylift pulling out the backlight to create this reflection here. While on the left above the car there was a softbox creating these blue reflections. Judging by the shadow under the car, the source of light was above the car, most likely another skylift. By the way, the yellow reflection looks like a flare, while the blue one does not seem to be a flare. This blue light also illuminates these containers on the right, which means that the source of a blue light is multi-directional, illuminating everything. The blue light here on the armor was most probably supported by a separate source of light. Perhaps some frost frame was there. And on the right, another frost frame could be located. So we see blue and yellow on the sides and emphasize the same colors on the armor. A beautiful larger close shot. You can see how great anamorphic lenses work on a full-frame camera. Well, here's some classic blue side light. although we can notice several flare in his eyes. 1, 2. Most likely there was some kind of soft frame. That is where the first flare is from. And from below, the light could be used to create extra flares and reflections on his armor, hence the other flare. They could use some kind of silver for this. Another fight scene, in quite a uniform light. Again, the windows hang it with frost frames. There are only frost frames behind which sources of light are located. Something like a bunch of sky panel 360s stacked together. If this is an indoor location, most likely there is a source of soft light that creates this overhead light. And this is basically all we have. There is no light coming from the camera's side. That is why the characters look so dark. Of course, there is a smoke to make them look darker, more contrasting, while the background is softer. Switching to close shots, we want to see faces. That is why some source of light from camera's side starts working. We can see those reflections. There must be a frame standing here, or it could be located above them to make these reflections visible. It is notable that despite this is an action scene, the camera is often static. We could expect a lot of movement, shaking, but no. This frame is static. Camera is not moving. Here, the camera is also either attached to a stand or a rack. It is static here as well. In this frame, there is a panoramic movement, still the camera is on a stand. And here it is on a rack that is moving closer. So the camera is pretty much static, rigidly attached. There is a panoramic movement during closer shots. Close shots are static. In this particular case, the reason could be the need to actually implement CG, so a little to no movement was required, so no wonder it was static. Later there is a movement on a slider or a rack, a panoramic movement. And here is a simple panoramic movement with the camera attached to a stand. No handheld type of movement. So almost everything was shot with a camera attached to a stand. The zooming movements are achieved with slider or a rack. So that was all for today's breakdown, friends. I hope that it was useful and you liked it. If you did, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. You may also subscribe to my Boosty page to access exclusive content. I make cinematography breakdowns of my subscribers' works and my other works as well. In addition, there is a private Telegram chat. See you in the next video. Till next time, bye.